Okay, guys, I'm going to talk a little bit about the fell races. I know Sadie had some questions about orcs, and most of you guys have some questions about the enemies of Arash, or also known as the fell races. So I'm just going to go ahead and read a couple of these articles for you, just so you have something in audible format. So the fell races. The fell races were evil races that were once created and corrupted by evil gods and Rephi. Great orcs, trolls, and ogres were created by the Rephi, Earth Brother, in response to his ostracizing by the other Rephi. He created them to cause chaos and destruction in the world. After failing to gather the bands of great orcs to form an army, as great orcs can't be banded in large groups lest they fight viciously amongst themselves, Napel decided to create his own. Using the great orc as a model, he created orcs and goblins. The hobgoblins were created by the evil god Skotas by using dark magics on the corpses of elves and fae. Later, at Napal's request, he also created orcs and gnolls through foulcraft to bolster the ranks of the great fell army. So that's kind of a general synopsis of the fell races. The hobgoblins. Skotas created the hobgoblins by using foulcraft and black magic on the corpses of elves and fae creatures. He sought to build an army to challenge Hesh-Rahan. Instead, the hobgoblins had other plans. They formed a complicated society and began to subjugate the life around them. They formed large armies and tried to overwhelm their enemies by using coordinated tactics. They chose not to help Skotas, though they do feel a loyalty to him. They offer sacrifices to him and have made him their god. Okay, the Duergar. The Duergar are dwarves that have succumbed to the corruption of Napel. They live in settlements deep in the earth and care nothing for the problems of anyone but themselves. These are exactly like the Duergar in D&D 5e. However, their origins are different, so they look the same. Goblins. Often the common orcs and goblins are confused for each other. In fact, goblins are really just smaller versions of orcs. Perhaps Napel had halflings in mind when he created them for his armies. They are most often used as archers, trackers, and messengers due to their smaller stature. However, they don't lack any of the potency of their larger kin. They have become very good at camouflaging themselves and lying. Now, the goblins of Arash are different from the goblins in 5e. They're my own creation and more along the lines of Tolkien's orcs. They're just smaller versions of this. If you've seen the movies, they're more like the ones found in Moria, little scampering dudes. Okay, and let's see, gnolls. Gnolls. Finally succeeding where he had failed with the hobgoblins, Skotas created the gnolls from the carrion-eating dogs found in the remote parts of Dusmone. The gnolls worship and obey him without question. However, before he could build a force large enough to challenge Hesh-Rahan for the throne of death, Napel requested that they join his great fell army. So that's where gnolls came from. Great orcs. Now this is probably going to be the great orcs, and orcs are going to be most likely what Sadie's going to be mostly interested in. Great orcs. Earth Brother, seething with rage over being ostracized for his role in the death of the Leta Maiden, created the great orcs from the earth to punish the elves. He poured his malicious spirit into them, causing them to hate all living things. They were quick and strong and were keen to learn new ways to torment all life. These were the first orcs to roam Dusmone. They formed large nomadic bands and lived off the plunder of their raids upon the races. They were ferocious and savage raiders. At first, these were the only orcs, but later they would be called the Great Orcs to distinguish them from the lesser orcs that Napel created. The Great Orcs were gathered into the lesser orc armies, answering the Redstone's call. They dominated and harassed their smaller kin bullying their way into positions of leadership of the Great Fell army. There are still independent bands of great orcs that roam the wilds, far from the reach of Nepal, but these become fewer and fewer as they fall prey to Murkini. So the great orcs, they can't be gathered together in bands of more of 30 or 40 because their great hatred for life also corresponds to themselves. And in larger bands, they will just fight and fight and fight until only a small number exist. So they instead roam all the territory of Dusmone in bands. So Nepal had a really hard time gathering the great orcs together. So hence he had to create the orcs. Which, next up, the orcs. Orcs are known more commonly as lesser orcs or common orcs. When compared to the great orcs of old, the common orc is smaller and less aggressive than their kin. Nepal created them after failing to subjugate the great orc bands. The great orc is too aggressive to have more than 30 or 40 together at a time. This new orc could be formed into armies, though not as powerful. They would overwhelm Nepal's enemies with sheer weight of numbers. Nepal would send them raiding to get combat experience and also to keep them busy. Idle hands and all that. Okay, trolls. Trolls. After seeing all the chaos and harm that the orcs were causing, Earth Brother created the trolls next. He formed 3 different types: mountain, hill, and cave. Inside of each, he placed a love of destruction and a hatred for the serene and beautiful in nature. The mountain trolls were by far the largest and strongest, for they needed to endure the harsh conditions of the mountains. They would terrorize the mountain dwarves and other races. They are the most strong-willed of the 3. They are formidable within the ranks of the Great Fell army. They can be recruited. All trolls can. The hill trolls patrolled the hills in small bands, disrupting hill dwarf and human settlements. These became good workhorses when Nepal started to gather his foul races. The cave trolls are the most solitary of their kin. They can be found deep within the earth, where they prey upon Duergar and Abe. They also inhabit caves and forests where they make war upon the Yira. They also disrupt and destroy nature. So, Earth Brother created the great orcs and the trolls, and also the ogres. Ogres. When the great orcs and trolls had created a great fear and panic in the other races, Earth Brother then chose one final gift to the world. He wanted revenge and everything. He wanted revenge and everything to feel the pain that he felt. He created the ogres to hunt and eat elves, dwarves, and especially humans. Ogres are quick-tempered, solitary creatures that stake out a territory close to the sparse populations, where they can pillage and eat without too much reprisal. They often keep dire wolves as pets, as a warning system for their lairs. So ogres, they pretty much just hunt down and eat humanoids, but they're solitary. So they're really bad news. So the 3 that Earth Brother created are the natural, as everybody would know, these are the natural enemies of Arash, or the earth itself. But after Nepal fell, he created lesser orcs and goblins from the 2. So the old enemies that Saren would know about are the great orcs, the trolls, and the ogres. So far, nobody has encountered any giants. You don't know about giants, you've encountered trolls. Okay, and Oruks. Finally, Oruks. Lacking minions that could be fully trusted to carry out complex tasks, Nepal sought the help of Skotas. Using sorcery to mix the great orc line with that of hobgoblins, he created the Oruks. The Oruk are not savage and crude like their kin, but are clever orcs that are used for a variety of tasks, whether it is command formations and armies, to smash through difficult resistance, or to be sent on delicate missions. They are the special forces of the orc species. Now, Sadie, Oruks could also be a good origin for half-orcs. I would say lesser orcs and orcs will probably be the best choices. Great orcs with their hatred of life and stuff doesn't really make too much sense, as they probably wouldn't just rape and pillage, but they would rape, pillage, and murder. So probably orcs and lesser orcs, and possibly goblins would be half orcs. So you can take that, kind of run with it a little bit there in your backstory. So those are the main enemies of the fell races, the enemies of Arash.